Kynan and Saskia are lost in the woods. A couple of days into their journey from Stone Ridge to Red Crest, they mistook an old overgrown path leading deeper into the deep wilds for just another batch of less dense vegetation, allowing them to skirt around the edges of the forest and not go too far in, as they had been doing thus far. This time, however, they were led astray and stumbled into the remains of a Ironlander settlement that had been reclaimed by the deep wilds for at least a couple of decades. And as the two of them were trying to make sense of the signs of firstborn activity and the strange, seemingly ritualistic destruction that had befallen the warning pillar of the village, Kynan and Saskia woke something that was left behind to protect this long forsaken place's secrets. A towering guardian made of bone and plants, glaring at them balefully out of the empty eye sockets of an enormous antlered deer skull. So let's jump right in and see how they fare. Hey, how are ya? I'm Anderson and this is Kill 10 Rats Plays Ironsworn, Chapter 2, Episode 3, and yes, Kynan and Saskia are in a bit of a bind. They have woken the Guardian, so to speak, or whatever this creature may be, and they will have to find a way to defeat this formidable foe. And that already brings us to the progress track, because it is a formidable foe. I just don't really have a name for it, and it's not really a creature that is described as such in the Ironsworn book. But I figured it's some kind of magical creation that the Firstborn are able to materialize through their connection to the land and the wild and plant life. And since Kynan is somewhat familiar with the Firstborn, perhaps he even knows what this is, so let's give it a name. Not like Bob or Jeremy, but let's give it a classification name. And let's have that name be a word in the Elven language, so an elf name that we then make a generic term for this kind of reanimated guardian. 72 Aralu. Okay, this is an Aralu. For those among us who have played Vampire the Masquerade, specifically the Dirty Secrets of the Black Hand, this bodes well. So defeat the Aralu. We now know that there is a type of creature in this world that's called Aralu, and it's made up of bone and plants and this black sap-like liquid, which for some reason I've taken to, in my head, call the blood of the earth. I have no idea where I'm going with this, but it is what it is. And while this is the progress track I am making at the moment, I am not even particularly certain that Kynan and Saskia will actually stay and fight. At least to the point where they manage to defeat this gigantic reanimated monstrosity. Because it's about twice as tall as they are and looks quite sturdy. So they might just chance an opportune moment to escape. But for now, it's right on them. At least as far as Kynan is concerned. Saskia we already saw react with a mixture of outrage and surprise, readying her spear, but also taking a few steps back. So at the moment I think Kynan has its attention, since Kynan was also the one that woke the Aralu up. Which sounds to me like he is going to have to face danger as it starts to swing at him. Now, in the fiction, an almost 4 meters tall monster made up of animal bones, vines, plants, thorns, topped off by the skull of a deer of mammoth proportions, is towering over Kynan, who just has the wherewithal to raise his sword and make ready to dive to whatever side seems the most opportune to dodge as the first blow comes down. With a speed that is challenging for Kynan to evade, but he's got good reflexes, so we're gonna try to face danger here with edge. That is quite successful, so we take +1 momentum, and that also allows us to now, I think, turn this into an actual somewhat structured combat encounter where we enter the fray as Kynan recovers from this, well, almost ambush of this thing all of a sudden coming to life and swinging at him before he gets his sword fully out and ready. So we're going to enter the fray. And since we are facing off, we are going to enter the fray with heart. That's a miss. I think that would not be ideal, so I'm going to burn all that beautiful momentum we've just gathered to turn this into a strong hit, which technically gives us 2 momentum back in the sequence of events. So, well, it is the effect of a strong hit, and we produce the strong hit with the momentum, so that's sequentially first. We'll take the momentum, and we have the initiative, and we will use that initiative. I think we're gonna secure an advantage here with a view on how Kynan probably thinks to fight that thing. I feel like it's made of plants, but it's undead. Cutting bits off, especially at that size, seems a little bit less effective than, let's say, fighting it with fire. And the advantage Kynan seeks to secure is to draw its attention away from Saskia, while he also instructs her to light up a torch away from the line of sight of the Aralu, and then attack it from behind with a torch while Kynan holds its attention. So he's gonna do the bob and weave, dart and cut thing again with his iron sword, which I think is a threat to it. The iron will at least be... the sting will be felt, but with a creature like this, the fiction just kind of tells me that fire is probably the most effective. So we're going to secure an advantage with... it is deception and trickery in a way, because we're not really trying to attack. We're not really using hard to face off. So let's use Shadow. And that looks like it went very well, which means we gain something extra. We can make another move now with a +1, which then would be the attack as performed by Saskia. And what the match does for us, I guess we'll leave up to the Oracle. So let's roll a action and theme for a start. 50 transform. 08 weapon. Transform weapon. Alright, I think I have an idea. I think the next move we make is a strike, and then we describe what the hell just happened. So we strike using iron. 6 plus iron plus 1, that is definitely a strong hit. We retain the initiative, we inflict +1 harm, which makes it, well, 2 harm. And I think because of Transform Weapon, I'll make it 3 harm, and I'll explain by describing the fiction why. As the Aralu swings at Kynan, he dodges back and understands immediately that merely hacking at it or poking at it with sword and spear is not going to get them very far in this mismatched encounter. So he shouts to Saskia to ready a torch, fight it with fire, and proceeds to leap forward and starting to cut at it with his sword in an effort to draw his attention away from Saskia and turn it towards where Kynan is moving and maneuvering. And he maintains just enough forward momentum to keep the Aralu's attention, but for every step forward he takes 2 or 3 steps back and draws it, and its enormous swings closer and closer towards the circle of the burned, between the defiled iron pillar and the edge of the circle. And with that movement and a few minor cuts that do sting because they do come from treated iron, from true iron, the Aralu doesn't pay much attention to Saskia, who uses that time and with a few quick motions lights up a torch, takes a running start, and jumps at the creature's back and just buries the torch about as high as she can reach, wedging it in between some dangling bones and the vines that are interlocking, forming this almost cloak that hangs down its back. And this flame immediately catches, and while it doesn't have vocal cords to make a sound with, it briefly tosses back its skull and clacks the jaws together for an unearthly clattering sound. And as it turns, it tries to swipe at Saskia behind him. Some of that black ichor, that black blood of the earth sap, touches Kynan's sword, and immediately upon contact, that little coating of sap bursts into flame for a brief moment, and Kynan strikes at the side of the Aralu, now also with a burning weapon, briefly at least, and that inflicts some additional damage. And the two of them retain the initiative as Saskia bounds back, now with the spear at the ready, trying to use it to maintain some distance, and with Kynan on the other flank, both of them holding the creature's attention as the fire is still eating at the creature's cloak of vines. So we're gonna roll another strike with iron and see what outcome we can generate. We're getting a weak hit here, which means we do inflict our harm, but we lose the initiative. The sap on Kynan's sword doesn't burn very long, it's just a reaction of this blood of the earth substance meeting uncorrugated, unrusted, well-maintained true iron. And it's a bit too unreliable for him to just go for a second coating, so what he does instead is to try and regain the creature's attention, at the same time as Saskia is positioning herself so that the creature ideally can only look at one of them at a time. And the actual damage that we inflict now is still done by the torch burning, well, until we do no damage anymore, and then we decide it's gone out. So that would be right about now, because we have to now either clash or face danger. Judging by the description, clash seems ill-advised with a creature of that size and prowess. So we are going to do another face danger here, and we do this with edge because we don't have the initiative to deceive it right now. That went well. That's another strong hit, albeit a close one, which gives us one momentum and makes us regain the initiative here in this combat. So we are again going to represent the maneuvering to be able to generate another fire attack by securing advantage with Shadow. That's what Kynan now embarks on doing again. That's another good one. These are all very low rolls. We choose to make another move now with a +1 again. So this time round what Kynan does is he, due to this encounter now having shifted the position again, he's moved back, bounded back towards the iron pillar, and having reached that now, he kind of drags his sword through some of that sap coming down and flicks it in the direction of the Aralu, and that streak of flame coming towards it, even though it doesn't really do any damage, it just evaporates immediately in the air, catches the Aralu's attention, allowing Saskia again to ready another one of her torches. I think at this point I'm gonna have to almost deduct some supply as we're just chucking our light sources at this thing, but I think we can reasonably assume that we have more than one torch each. So let's turn this into a strike with +1 and iron. And that does indeed look like another good one, which means we do our 2 harm here, and we retain the initiative. And I think this time Saskia uses the momentary break, for her at least in the combat, to just quickly affix a torch to the top of her spear instead of jumping and plunging it in again. And with that lit torch just attacking and basically now making herself the primary target, because this Aralu really does not like fire, but also ensuring that this blindside attack she now does with her spear and then ripping the spear torch out again inflicts that additional damage. And as the Aralu whips around and tries to crush Saskia with a downward swing of both of its viney arms, we strike again. We strike with iron, we achieve a weak hit, which gives us another damage and then puts the initiative on the Aralu, which makes sense. Saskia gets in another hit and just jumps back out of reach as the 2 arms of bone tangled up in vine come down and almost make her leap once more as the earth just vibrates under her feet. And at that point she's on the back foot and Kynan has to play catch up and try to get back in the fight in some meaningful way. I think we might also assume that he has a torch out now and tries to get it lit. But now we have to face danger again. So in this case, again with edge. And again a positive match, and we strong hit this one, so the rolls are being magnificent again. That was a match on face danger, mostly affecting Saskia, so with that in mind, let's ask the Oracle again. Action and theme. We're getting a 0-3 weaken, and we get 27 creation. Weaken creation. I think at this point, perhaps that means it's about to fall apart and it will only do damage like a dangerous foe if it gets a hit off on Kynan or Saskia, so Kynan effectively. And in the fiction, therefore, as Saskia retreats and uses the torch to buy herself some distance, always trying to keep it out of range of the swinging limbs, the fire is already spreading along the Aralu's body in entire form, and first pieces of charred bone drop to the ground, and its gait becomes a bit more lumbering, its movement slower, and as it swings the next all or nothing swing, putting its entire strength into every blow, part of its arm starts flying off into the distance, and that black sap-like substance squirts forth and just barely misses Saskia as she dives her head out of the way. And that generates an opening for Kynan, who now has a torch, to jump in and ram that home. So let's do that then. Let's strike again. That's a weak hit, meaning we lose the initiative. And as with Kynan now being the closest, immediately in range, having just rammed that torch home, the swinging vines come back and try and rid itself of at least one of these pests, and this unseeing swing is quicker maybe than Kynan expected, and now he has to face danger again or get smacked. That looks like a smack to me, but not a full-blown one, because we do face danger with a weak hit, meaning a troublesome cost. And I guess in this case we are catching a glancing blow, and we endure harm. Plus health or plus iron doesn't really matter because they're both 3 at the moment. That appears to be a weak hit, which means we take the damage and retain the damage, and we press on. Now we weak hit the face danger. What does that mean for our initiative? Does that mean we get it, or does that mean we don't get it? Weak hit or miss, we lose initiative, so we don't have it. And after that glancing blow, which still took Kynan off his feet and had him roll a few paces before he jumps back up, he finds himself face to face with a, well, almost worse sight than just purely the Aralu waking up. Now it's an Aralu on fire, and it's angry, and it's coming towards him, trying to rip him limb from limb. So we're gonna have to do a face danger again here. And we do it with edge, and we do it as a strong hit, which means we regain the initiative and gain 1 momentum. I think at this point it's time for a decisive ending the fight move, because we are at 8 progress. That's not terrible. Let's give it a go. That would have done it. So we have ended the fight, put the foe out of action, defeated it. How do we... I almost said I want to do this. How do we do this? How does this look in the fiction? Kynan's leading the Aralu almost in a merry dance around the desecrated iron pillar, and he can see it faltering. At its next blow, it tries to really combine its 2, for lack of a better term, hands its dangly appendages into a massive lump and just bring it down on Kynan. And with that forward momentum and the lack of strength and the parts falling off it being on fire, it stumbles forward and takes a knee, bringing that deer skull with its glowing eye sockets very, very close to Kynan, who jumps back, finds himself next to the iron pillar, turns his sword around, drags it through more of that bleeding sap, jumps forward and buries it burning in one of the eye sockets, which causes the skull to just crack and the energy that kept the Aralu going just to dissipate, and it crumbles into a smoldering heap of bones and dried out vines and leaves. That went better than I would have expected. As Saskia steps close and just looks at the mess that they've made and looks around at the not very inviting scenery, she says, "What do you think the odds are that this thing called for help as soon as it woke up?" And Kynan, still breathing heavily, tears a sword out of the skull, wipes it a bit on the grass before he puts it back into the scabbard, and envisioning the scene of having this whole clearing surrounded by masked elves with bows pointed at them, he just nods and starts moving in the direction of what he is relatively sure is north, because at this point he just tries to bridge the gap towards the other edge of the forest and no longer trying to make that eastward maneuver, since for all he knows they've already traveled half a day away from the forest edge and he doesn't want to backtrack, especially not with the attention they've just generated. He wants to move towards Red Crest almost in a beeline as quickly as he can. So I think without healing or resting or anything, we're just going to undertake a journey and see where that leads us. That's a weak hit, which means we reach a waypoint and suffer 1 supply. That is unfortunate since we're starting to run a bit low, but we're also getting reasonably close to the finish line here. I'm almost thinking, do I reflect the headless rush towards the north in just rolling for reaching our destination after this waypoint? Let's see what's awaiting us there and then decide where we're gonna take this. So we have to envision a waypoint. Let's maybe start with a location. 72, a lake. We reach a secluded lake deep in the still southeastern edge of the deep wilds, which go much, much deeper and much farther north. So it's not like we're really in the thick of it, and we're probably just on the edge of where the firstborn, where the elves are hanging out, but still close enough, too close really, for how Kynan feels about these things. So that lake is a welcome sight for 2 people that are running low on supply and who are running out of daylight. So let's maybe get a feel for what the situation at this lake is, whether we have a tranquil experience to expect or whether we aren't alone here maybe. Action and theme to the rescue. It's a 34 uphold. 96 relationship again. I guess that makes it tranquil, as it gives Saskia and Kynan a chance to further sit down and deepen that bond, as they have now decided that they're going to be traveling companions for the foreseeable future. So they'll just exchange some more stories from the past as they make camp. But I think we will also, before we do that, forage a little bit. And by that, I would imagine that they do some fishing. So we roll plus wits, and hopefully we can take some supply. We can indeed. We take 2 supply as we catch probably a couple of fish each. Maybe Saskia is spear fishing and Kynan is just standing in the water trying to grab some with his hands. And then we reflect our uphold relationship by a make camp move. We roll plus supply of 4. That's a weak hit. We can recuperate and recover some of our health. Or we can take a +1 if we undertake the journey next. But I think we're gonna take that health back because that is definitely necessary. And now I wonder, do we reflect this next day's travel by trying to reach our destination and actually arrive in Red Crest? Or do we make one more undertake a journey move? I think we're gonna make one more undertake a journey move just to put the odds slightly in our favor. Holy smokes, what are we rolling today? This is pretty unreal. Okay. That's a double 1. So we have a strong hit without the use of supplies. So we make one more progress, putting us up to 7, and we have another advantageous turn of events. What are we getting this time? 21 leave. 38 protection. Leave protection. That doesn't sound like an advantage unless we leave and therefore that is protection. Maybe that's how we can read this. So we actually, while we're not in Red Crest, we break on through to the lighter forest edge area now on the northern side of this crossing that we're making. And perhaps that gives us the confidence to now push for the resolution of the journey, and we take a +1 on the destination roll, maybe? Yeah, I'd like to reach Red Crest, so let's take a +1 on the reach our destination roll and watch me roll a double 0 now, of course. So we roll challenge dice +1 against a 7, meaning 7 and below sees us ending this formidable journey and reaching the town of Red Crest, which currently has its share of troubles of its own, so we'll have to find out how that plays out once we get there. But for now, let's see if we can reach it. 7 and 4. With the +1 that I weaseled out of this oracle result, I think that's a strong hit. So since we don't really have an immediate other move to make, we will take that 1 momentum, which puts us back to 8 miraculously. That combat really bumped up our momentum track again. And we get our first glimpse of the town, the city by Ironlander standards, of Red Crest. And the way I picture this town is very, very close to the forest edge, with a river separating the forest edge and the now cleared lower village, lower town of Red Crest, which is surrounded by fortifications. Also has a pier extending into the river with a few boats moored to it. The river is wide enough for that. But I envision this town to be on 2 levels, with the main longhouse where the ruler of Red Crest resides on the edge, on top of a cliff overlooking the lower village and the houses of the richer citizens of Red Crest being up there, also again walled off. And that this cliff face that is peeking through this elevation upon which this longhouse sits, that this is made of a reddish kind of rock, which gives the town its name. And this proximity to the edge of the forest, plus their activities in logging and foraying into the forest to hunt and, well, secure themselves some trade goods and some essentials for their survival, always puts them at odds with the Firstborn, whom they've repeatedly beaten back, but who will always try and sally forth and make sure that the wilds can extend further again, because they used to extend all the way up that ridge, but then the human settlers kind of cut everything down and fortified everything. So that's where this nature strikes back comes from, that is currently afflicting the town here. And as Kynan and Saskia wade through the river and manage to cross it at a fordable point with Red Crest in the evening sun in the distance, we'll find out what happens there next time. So thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you then, and bye for now.